Have you ever heard about a double agent who was so good at his work that he got awarded with both an Iron Cross from the Germans and a Member of the Order of the British Empire by the British government? A double agent who was one of the main reasons the Germans thought D-Day was going to take place at Pas-de-Calais, even when D-Day was already well underway. A double agent who after the war faked his death for 36 years. Get ready for the amazing and crazy story of Juan Pujol Garcia. Call sign Agent Garbo. First, let's dive a bit deeper into the man himself. Who is he, and what made him do those exceptional actions? Born in Barcelona in 1912, Garcia was raised in a country that was on the brink of civil war, with the Republican communists on one side and the nationalist forces led by Franco on the other side. Still, this tension didn't stop Garcia from pursuing his dreams. He wanted to become a filmmaker in torn Spain, but history caught up with him, where Spain entered an open civil war. Due to his strong anti-communist beliefs, Garcia joined forces with Franco's nationalists and fought the Republicans. As the war progressed, Garcia grew more and more disillusioned with the nationalist and fascist view of the world. He witnessed terrible war crimes and decided he didn't want to be a part of this movement anymore. Therefore, he fled to the safety of France. But it was not long until his peace and safety there were interrupted. Nazi Germany entered open war with France on the 1st of September 1939 by invading Poland. And on May 10th, 1940, they launched Fall Gelb, the invasion of the Low Countries and France. Being full of anger against any form of nationalism, Garcia was determined to join the British war effort as a spy against Germany. So determined that he wasn't deterred when British officers turned him down because he didn't have any connections or credentials. Not giving up, he formulated a plan to build up his resume, while at the same time aiding the Allied war effort. He put his first deception plan in motion. Pretending to be a Spanish official, he traveled to the British embassy in Madrid in 1941 and offered his services to the Abwehr, the German military intelligence agency. Garcia portrayed himself as a dedicated Nazi supporter and provided the Germans with fabricated information about British military installations and activities. To bolster his credibility, Garcia acquired various reference books, travel guides, and magazines about the United Kingdom. He studied these materials in detail to create a vast knowledge of British geography, military units, and infrastructure. Despite his determination, Pujol initially struggled to convince the Germans of his authenticity. They were skeptical and doubted his credentials as a spy. Sensing the Germans' doubts, Pujol began to send them misleading information that would make them question the accuracy of his reports. This strategy worked, as the Germans believed Pujol was a genuine source of intelligence, and they eventually granted him the codename Arabelle and enlisted him as a spy. Garcia set up an elaborate system to maintain his cover as a loyal Nazi agent. He established a network of sub-agents throughout the United Kingdom, all of whom were entirely fictional. He provided the Germans with regular intelligence reports that mixed real information, recycled news articles, and carefully crafted false details. Pujol's reports often contained plausible yet misleading information to maintain his credibility while subtly distorting the truth. But he wasn't flawless and escaped discovery many times. On one occasion, he told the Germans that in Scotland he found men who would do anything for a liter of wine, forgetting that men in Scotland never drank wine, but only beer and whiskey. Assuming he built up quite a resume for himself, he, again, approached the British in 1942. He told them he wanted to become a double agent, which he, in fact, already was. British operatives had already realized that a secret spy was sending information to Germany from Portugal and Spain, but didn't know who that spy was. When Garcia revealed himself, they brought him to London to work for MI5. This is where it truly gets fascinating. Despite the fact that a lot of this information was incorrect, the Nazis continued to think of Garcia as an important spy throughout the war. To keep this ruse going, Garcia needed to continually convince the Germans that he had an extensive network of spies. At one point in time, he had a total of 27 imaginary spies feeding him information about the Allies. Seeing that the Nazis completely trusted Juan Pujol, British intelligence approached him for his most important task yet. The tide of war was shifting in favor of the Allies, and preparations for the invasion of mainland Europe were about to begin. But Hitler also knew this, and had already given orders for building the Atlantic Wall, a gigantic wall of fortifications going from the north of Norway to the south of France. Full of mines, bunkers, guns, and all sorts of obstacles to make sure the Allies couldn't even think about invading the mainland. Hitler called it Fortress Europa. To get a proper foothold in France, the Allies needed a few things: good beaches, a lot of troops, and as few Germans as possible opposing them. For this to happen, they needed to trick the Germans. The Wehrmacht headquarters always believed that the Allies would try landing at Pas de Calais, which seemed reasonable because of its good white beaches and the fact that it was the closest to Britain. Therefore, the Germans committed a lot of resources to that location. Immense bunkers with huge naval guns, large amounts of AA guns, and a lot of troops. But still, there were German generals who doubted this location, just for the simple reason that it was just too obvious. They saw another option for the Allies: Normandy. Hitler had to make a compromise: fully gamble on Pas de Calais or divide his troops. He went for the latter, putting his best armored divisions in reserve in the middle between Normandy and Pas de Calais. These divisions could make life for the Allies landing at the beaches in Normandy very ugly, and they needed to make sure that Hitler didn't send them to Normandy during the beginning of Operation Overlord. For that to happen, the Allies needed to make the Germans believe that their main landing was going to take place at Pas de Calais. What the Allies needed was a gigantic ruse. They called it Operation Fortitude, an operation to make the Germans convinced that the Allies were going to land at Pas de Calais, and in the center of that operation was Juan Pujol Garcia, famously known as Agent Garbo. Garcia made the Germans believe that the 1st United States Army Group, under the command of the highly respected General Patton, was positioned in southeastern England across from Calais. Through his network of fictional agents and carefully crafted reports, Pujol successfully convinced the Germans that this army group was the main force for the anticipated Allied invasion. He fed them false information, emphasizing the strength and readiness of this fictional army while downplaying the actual invasion plans. But, as you might have guessed, this army group was completely fictional. The Allies went so far that they built massive troop camps, placed inflatable tanks, and kept a complete fake fleet docked in the ports opposing Calais. The information Garcia gave the Germans was so convincing that, even when the Allies already landed thousands of troops on the beaches of Normandy, Hitler refused to send the panzer divisions to Normandy in aid of the weaker divisions there, still believing the main assault to take place in Calais. What would have happened if Garcia was not successful remains a mystery, but it is certain that D-Day would have been a lot more difficult for the Allies. After the war, Garcia wanted to wipe the war from his memories and decided to migrate to Venezuela. But Venezuela was also a country that was chosen by many senior Nazi officials to flee retribution. Therefore, he took rigorous action. Agent Garbo's last trick. Garcia figured it would be safer for him there if everybody thought he was dead. He called his handler at MI5, Tommy Harris, and instructed him to tell everyone that he had died of malaria in Angola. A year later, the British ambassador in Spain officially told his first wife and children that he was dead. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, Pujol grew a beard and started wearing a distinguishing pair of glasses. He led a quiet and peaceful life until in 1980 he was discovered by a British writer called Nigel West, who looked into his life and theorized that he hadn't died. When confronted, Garcia admitted he was the double agent everybody thought deceased. He moved back to Europe and had to come clean with his ex-wife and children. He finally passed away in 1988, but not before writing a book about his life, about the one thing that the Germans could not: exposing Agent Garbo. If you like these kind of videos, consider subscribing to Untold History, and you can enjoy way more untold stories.